I'm gonna be honest with you. I did not go into this movie expecting to come out needing to talk about it. I, of course, like I'm sure many of you have already done and heard, I heard that it was an amazing movie and you just had to watch it. So on my cheat day, dieting by the way, I went to the theater and I watched it, expecting it to just be like kind of another movie. And, it's a spin off too in the Shrek franchise, but like, eh, and I mean, no hate on Shrek. But in general, the series has just not seemed very inspired to me lately. So much so that I actually don't remember what happened in the last one, even though I know I watched it. This movie, though, it was definitely inspired and was definitely created with a wide array of audiences in mind. Like, you can definitely see parts of it intended for children to giggle at and relate to, but there are also some surprisingly hard hitting parts in it, too. I'm one who tends to get moved by media, not usually to like tears and stuff, and that has happened before. I'm not going to say I never cried at a movie. But for the most part, my getting moved is when I get that little choked up feeling in the back of your throat. And I'm going to be honest with you again. I was not expecting that to happen here in the Puss in Boots sequel. Yet, I was. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the trailers here. What came out before the movie. And not give any context that you get from outside of the trailers, so to avoid spoilers. But spoiler, there will be spoilers later in the video, and you'll be warned when that happens. It's not happening yet. Just want to talk about the style and some of the base stuff we get from the trailers in the movie first. That being said, feels very inspired, especially in the action sequences, by Spider-Verse. There's a lot of expression in the movements as well as the faces, and of course there's that whole thing where you can see like the stylized motions where like the frame rate dips and stuff like that, just like in Spider-Verse, and a lot of the big action scenes. Don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking inspiration from Spider-Verse. In fact, honestly, I hope more companies do so. The idea that a dedicated team with a vision and passion behind them, with less than half the budget of some of the larger animated films, can make a movie far more memorable than those larger teams is one that should resonate with companies. As a fun little side, the sequel actually had a smaller budget than the first movie, and it actually had the same budget as Into the Spider Verse did, sitting at around 90 mil USD, allegedly. Much like its inspiration, this movie feels very stylized and far more of its own thing compared to the original, which felt like a Shrek movie, but without Shrek in it, in terms of aesthetic at least. Needless to say, the trailers look good, so I went in with the idea it would be pretty decent for sure. We see our new antagonists in the Big Bad Wolf, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and Little Jack Horner. Now, Big Jack Horner. And I have to admit, I really like all of their designs. Though I will say, Jack Horner's design only grew on me after I watched the movie proper, and not so much in the promo material. The trailers also did a solid job of setting up the premise. Kitty and Puss teaming up, with the third member being a dog, Puss being on his last life, a wish being available, and all the powers involved are fighting for that wish. That being said, I've said pretty much all I can say praise wise without getting into spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, pause the video, go out, get a ticket, watch it, and come back. Whether I see you in 10 days or 3 hours, I'll wait right here. Hi, everybody. How's life? They're taking a while to get back, huh? Oh, they're already back? Almost like this was a video and time doesn't actually pass like that? Oh, okay, okay. Spoilers incoming. Ye be warned. And all that jazz. So, praise, at least from me, does not come lightly, especially in media as this. There are very few movies, and even less animated ones, that get me animated. Anyways, this is one of those few. And honestly, it starts off with a good tone setter for the movie. It's a little musical number where Puss in Boots is hyping himself up with the help of the townsfolk around him. You can immediately tell a few things about his personality in this bit. First of all, Puss says the name of the town he's in wrong at first. Even though he's giving them money and throwing them a party, the party is actually about him. Because he's most obsessed with himself, and more obsessed with himself as the legend, Puss in Boots. He doesn't really care where he is, he cares that it's about him. This narcissism is actually the reason he ends up dying his eighth time, funnily enough. Because he goes to play an encore song for the townsfolk, and a bell that was on like a giant or something falls on him and kills him. You can also see when he's talking to the doctor, all of his deaths are really pointless. And it's just him trying to show off in some way, shape, or form. This leads into the main motivator for Puss. He is on his last life. And while he still has his little cocky attitude following his encounter with the doctor, he very quickly changes his tune when he meets a bounty hunter at a bar, who outplays him at every single turn of their fight, and it makes him actually fearful for his life. Something Puss in Boots says is, Puss in Boots has never been scratched by a blade, or something like that, cut by a blade. And he gets cut in their fight, and he legitimately gets scared and runs away. He gets disarmed multiple times throughout the fight, and when he's about to run away, the big bad wolf, or since we're in spoiler territory already, Death, tells him to pick it up, and Puss just runs. He runs away to somewhere where the doctor told him to go. It was like a retirement home for cats. Well, it's more like a cat sanctuary. Crazy cat lady's house, basically. And there we run into one of my favorite characters, Perito, a dog who wants to be a therapy dog, who actually has a kind of dark backstory once it comes out. More on that a little later. And we also run into the secondary, like, lead characters in Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And they're also there to move the plot forward. They basically explain the MacGuffin of the story, the wish thing. They want to find Puss in Boots, not to claim his bounty, but to hire him to steal a map that leads to the wish that exists somewhere. The last wish, as it were. Puss sees this as an opportunity to get his lives back so his legend can live on. And Puss doesn't get recognized by Goldie due to him looking like so disheveled and Baby's nose being blocked by the scent of cat pee, in the house full of a million cats. He decides to come out of retirement after making it through his encounter with them in order to steal the wish and take it for his own. I'm not going to spoil every single beat, but that introduction to each player, it was done really well. There was even a good introduction with Kitty Softballs again, who is all there to backstab Goldie and steal the map for her own wish. She knew about it because they came to hire her first before they went to go find Puss in Boots in order to do the stealing. We also meet the person who's being stolen from, Jack Horner, who is the owner of the map, and he wants to use the wish to own all the magic of the world. And that's where we first run into the map itself, the MacGuffin that can give the wish to one of the interested parties. We know Puss has a wish, it's his 9 lives. We know Kitty has a wish, she doesn't say what it is until later on. And Perito, who's traveling with them, and who was actually sort of the getaway driver who followed Puss to the compound and drove them out, he doesn't have a wish because he has what he wants. So he's got 2 friends to spend time with. Even though they're not really friends, they're kind of just along for the ride in order to steal the wish for their own eventually. At least at first. And this is the point in the story where we actually, when they're on the Wish Crusade, we find out the bounty hunter is actually Death. And he outright states it at some point. He's like, I am Death. Not metaphorically, not whatever, allegorically. I forget what he says. It's something like that. But he says a bunch of stuff. He's like, not metaphorically, I am literally Death. And he's here for Puss because Puss has squandered his lives. And he feels like, well, all your other lives were a waste. Why don't we just get this last one out of the way? While we're talking about the characters that we meet, and the antagonists especially, Jack Horner is excellent. He is just evil. That is his whole thing. He's just a bad guy. He even gets a Jiminy Cricket conscious because he steals a bunch of magical items. That's his whole shtick. So one of the items he has is Jiminy Cricket, who tries to convince him, deep down, oh, you're a good person, just listen to your conscience. You're actually a good person deep down. But eventually, even the Jiminy Cricket character realizes that Horner is just evil, just straight up evil. And he even says it to Horner, you're evil all the way down. You can't be good. And Horner just says, what took you so long? And flicks him off his shoulder. That was great. That was funny. I think his design also really fits. Like I said, I didn't like it in the promotional material because it's kind of a goofy looking design. But being the giant man-child that he is, with the little baby face and the big body and little baby legs, it's funny. It really suits him well. Real quick, the path changes based on who holds the map or who touches the map last. And Perito's map is what looks to everybody to be the most safe map. And this is when I realized this movie was definitely meant for all audiences. I mean, aside from the heavy topic of death and what it means to live your life, because Perito's jokes are more childlike and are funnier to children than they would be to an adult watching it. But there is a lot of stuff that he says that's also meant for adults. Like obviously Perito is like the child character, the one the kids are gonna be like, haha, goofy. But they asked the dog for his name. He says he's been called a lot of things, including bleep head. And that made me and my buddy actually look at each other and go like, whoa, they went there, huh? Also, his backstory is of his littermates like playing hide and seek with him in ways that were really obviously trying to get rid of him, where like they put him in shipping crates, like packing containers and a bunch of stuff, down to the very last one where they put him in a sock with a rock in it and threw him in a river. Like that is depressing. In fact, the sock that they talked about in the story is actually the clothes he wears. He's like, I grew into it, but I guess I'm still it because I never found them. So they did technically get rid of him. They just didn't, do what they wanted to do to him. Some of these subjects are quite serious. For instance, Puss in Boots spends the whole movie running from death, both metaphorically and very literally, only to have him die metaphorically. He gives up his legend in the end in order to actually live his life. He doesn't take the wish, even though he has the opportunity to take the wish, just because he doesn't want to do that anymore. He doesn't care about the legend. The legend has died. As a matter of fact, he has a confrontation with Death, who asks him if he's going to take the easy way out, get more lives and all that stuff. And as he's fighting Death, Death asks, lives flashing before you? Which is something he asked before. And when it happened before, yeah, Puss in Boots' multiple lives were flashing before him. But in this instance, you can see that's not the case this time. And he actually responds, no, just this one. And that was a power moment. That was good. Good line there. And during this fight with Death, he actually even disarms Death. And he kicks Death's sickle back at him and says, pick it up. It's the reverse of what happened before, right? And it's Puss in Boots showing off that he's not going to go wish for more lives. He's going to fight for this life. This is the life he wants to live. And this actually upsets Death, not because Puss won or anything, but he says in Spanish, he's like, why do I always play with my food? Because, he could have killed Puss in Boots earlier and been done with it. But because Puss in Boots is now fighting for his life and really truly living his life and doing it in a way that's not selfish or conceited, Death doesn't want to take him anymore, because this is actually a Puss in Boots that wants to live and doesn't laugh in the face of Death anymore. Death even says something along the lines of, I was after an arrogant little legend, but he's not here anymore. And then he leaves Puss in Boots saying, we'll meet again, because death comes for us all. There's also some deeper moments too throughout the movie, obviously. There's one I want to talk about, is a moment that got both me and my buddy, we talked about it after, and we both had the same feeling of being moved emotionally. And it was the moment where he has a panic attack. If you've seen the movie, like you should have before coming to the spoiler section, Puss sees Death everywhere in a forest, and he panics, running away. And Perito follows him. And Puss, eventually stops at a tree. You can hear him breathing heavy, his heart's beating super loud. And Perito sees that there's something wrong with him, and he just lies his head on him. And Puss pets him. You hear his breathing calm down, and you hear the heartbeat slow down. And that's like a callback sort of to when Perito said earlier that he wants to be a therapy dog, and he's actually doing it. And that moment just got me because, full disclosure, I've had panic attacks before. And another scene that hit me in an animated work was in BoJack Horseman, when Hollyhock is having an anxiety attack and Peter helps her ground herself. Footage missing, but things like this are really scary to go through, and seeing various artists visualize and show what it's like for those who may have just never had a panic attack before, it really gets to me, because it's a call to me. And I'm sure if you've never had a panic attack, you can see the importance in that moment too. And I really appreciate that kind of stuff, because people have those issues and it's important. As an aside, Goldie's plot also wraps up. Her goal this whole time has been to get a real family. But through her adventuring, which by the way includes her letting her wish be known to her family, and her family still helping her, even though they were essentially told that they were not her real family, which by the way is a very real family thing to do, she finds out on her own that she had what she wanted all along. And the map even alludes to it at some point during one of the midsections. I've been moved to write about a few things in terms of reviews. Some of them will be on this channel very soon, trademark. But nothing that got me to make a script and record the audio, make a video as fast as this has. It was a great movie, and honestly will go down, in my opinion, as one of the best DreamWorks movies of all time.